Good morning, everyone. My name is Emmanuel Peterson, and some of you might know me, some of you might not. I have been facilitating events with CANSA for the last 10 years. I'm also a life coach and an entrepreneur. Not that that's got anything to do with the support group today, but I want to welcome everyone on this Saturday morning. We have the support group once a month, obviously sponsored by Hollard Daredevil Run and CANSA. So I just want to acknowledge the fact that they are the ones making this possible. And just want to welcome the steering committee that's here, and then every single person that's here today, because they need support. That's what this event is for. This is what the support group is for. And I had a brief discussion with Michael before we started, like we always do with our speakers. And one thing that I really want to acknowledge today is people that know me know that I want to usually keep it light and fluffy, but I've realized that sometimes we need to talk about the gritty stuff. We need to talk about the real things, the fact that people are going through tough times, and it's not always great to just be light and fluffy about it. Sometimes we need to acknowledge the fact that people are going through a tough time, and I want to do that today and acknowledge the fact that I do understand that every single person that's on the support group is here not just to be motivated, but also to be acknowledged that you are going through a tough time. And please know that we are there for you. And myself as a life coach, I'm there for you. If you need assistance, please chat to me, and let's see how we can help you. And if you're going through a tough day, if you're going through a tough time, just know that it's okay. We understand that you're going through it, and there's a reason why you go through it. And if that's your journey, we want to help you. We want to be there for you, and not by telling you that everything's going to be okay, because sometimes it's not. So yeah, sorry, I don't want to start it gloomy, but I just wanted to mention that. And then I want to say welcome to every single person here that we've got to know. Andreas, we missed you at the last session. Thank you for being back. We'll listen afterwards how your journey's going, where you at the moment. I'm going to keep people muted until then, just so we don't disrupt the discussion. But we can't wait to hear from everyone what you're going through, and hopefully we can support you in whatever way you possibly need it. Now, with no further ado, I'm actually going to introduce our speaker for today, and some of you might know him from the WhatsApp group. He's been, especially lately, been really giving a incredible input and support on the WhatsApp group. So Michael Meredith will be sharing his journey with us today. Now, for people that don't know Michael, he's I'm not going to say the word because I actually can't pronounce the word, but he's a lung cancer survivor, very rare form of lung cancer. And I don't want to humiliate myself by mentioning the word, so I'm going to get Michael to do that for you. He's a trained counselor, which is incredible to have on the support group today, because we always hear from motivational speakers and people that talk their journeys that they've gone through in such a positive manner. But as a trained counselor, he also knows how to talk about the gritty stuff, which is what I'm excited for. I'm excited that Michael is here. And then he's, of course, a trauma counselor and a end of life doula. So he calls it a soul therapist, or soul. He mentioned it earlier, but I'm gonna not talk further. I'm actually gonna introduce Michael and give the stage to him so that he can talk. Michael, welcome, and thank you for being here today. We really appreciate it.
Hi, good morning. I wasn't sure what to say good morning to, because I know it's a men's group, but I know there's at least one woman listening. So I thought I'd say good morning to all my fellow travelers. As you know, my name's Michael. As you heard, I'm a counselor. The word you were looking for, Emmanuel, was soul midwife, which might seem a strange occupation for a male, but that's the word that they use for somebody that in South Africa is called a doula. It's used in Europe. I have one thing realized completely out of the blue when I was chatting to my wife yesterday. She's a great believer that the universe kind of steps in when it's necessary and makes things happen or makes events happen. Today happens to be the exact anniversary of when my cancer was triggered, and I started on what has been literally today a 12-month journey. So that's just that is a complete fascinating coincidence. Okay, let me talk a little bit about it. Although the diagnosis was made 10 months ago, I think, 2 months after the trigger, I had been suffering for years and years with, I suppose in summary, it would be, I would say, digestive problems. I had 3 major surgeries. I have lost most of my stomach. I've had 1.2 meters of my small bowel removed and a couple of other procedures, and none of that had ever done anything to help, nor reality. 10 months ago, a year ago, yesterday, my wife, who is a doctor, in their practice, they had just let one of the rooms that they let out to new different practitioners, they had rented the rooms to a shiatsu massage therapist. And my wife had thought this would be a good idea and bought me a voucher to go along on Friday for a shiatsu massage. I had no idea what it was. And I still don't have a great deal of information about what it was. All I know is she worked on my back and my adrenal gland particularly, and my lymph glands. And I enjoyed it, thought it was pleasant. But by Saturday at about 2 in the morning, I went into complete crisis. My neck around here looked as if I had mumps. All the lymph nodes had swollen out so visibly out of my neck. I was vomiting. I had a raging headache. And clearly this massage had triggered something very strange. My wife took bloods and had a full blood count done virtually immediately, including looking for cancer markers because of the lymph glands, and they showed absolutely nothing. She then arranged for me to go immediately on Monday for a scan, just of this area, the lymph glands, to see if maybe they could see something there, and the top half of my lung. In that process, the CT scan found a 50 millimeter growth in the top left-hand lung. She then scheduled a second scan just to have a look further down, and they found a second about 48 millimeter growth on my adrenal gland. At this stage, we had no idea what it was. The obvious assumption when you find something like that is that you've got cancer. But off I went and got on what I call the cancer train. I went off and saw a thoracic surgeon. I saw a specialist physician. I was then went for and they were already then planning that the thoracic surgeon would look immediately at removing this growth in my lung. They said that prior to that, they wanted me to go for a biopsy. I went off for my biopsy at Panorama. And as some of you'll know, if you've ever had it, you sit in a day ward after your procedure and you wait for the surgeon to finish. He's going to come down and tell you the answer. I had a really bad experience there from, I suppose it's a human point of view, is I was in the ward with 6 other people, all who'd had biopsies that morning. The surgeon walked in and with no privacy at all, sat down on my bed, didn't even bother to draw the curtains and said, well, you can forget the operation. We've discovered you have this neuroendocrine cancer. There is no treatment for it. It is not curable. And all we can do is put you on palliative care. I was still busy trying to deal with my own shock and watching the other people in the ward sitting there dreading their interview, if you will, because they knew they were coming next and they didn't know what message they were going to get. So that's a pure aside, but I thought that was horrendous. The next step in the train journey for me then was to go off to see an oncologist who said, yes, I'd like you to have a PET scan just to verify what we think. I had a PET scan at Tygerberg. I was dubious about that because I thought, oh, having to go to a government facility, but I can recommend it highly to anybody. It's really professional organization and handles things like that very professionally. But they confirmed the diagnosis. They said these two tumors lit up like light bulbs, and that's clearly what you got. And I was diagnosed then with stage 4 neuroendocrine lung cancer with a secondary tumor on my adrenal gland. Now, very briefly, neuroendocrine cancer is a very odd cancer. It's in fact the cancer that Steve Jobs, the famous man from Apple, died of. There is no cure for it. Largely, in my own mind, I'm a bit of a cynic about it, but I think because it is so rare, there's very little financial motivation for them to do anything about looking for cures. And I know that's my own cynical view, but I suspect that's why very little is done about it. The oncologist agreed with the diagnosis of the surgeon and said, we will put you onto chemotherapy once a month. It's not meant to try and cure anything. It's to help relieve symptoms because you also have something called carcinoid syndrome. And we'll give you this injection once a month. It's going to cost 37,000 Rand a shot and will be uncomfortable. And we will have to apply for your medical aid to get permission. And an interesting aside there again, and I'm trying to watch the time so I don't make too many asides with it. As many of you know who are dealing with medical aids, CANSA is termed as a prescribed minimum benefit. And medical aids, because it's a prescribed minimum benefit, have to pay for it. There's one catch. In reality, they don't, if they choose to, they do not have to pay for any cancer treatment which is not curative. They are only obliged by law to pay for cancer treatment that is curative. In my case, it was not a curative treatment. It was termed a palliative treatment. I was very lucky that my medical aid said, yes, we're happy to pay without any argument or hassle at all. And in fact, my medical aid has been fantastic in that sense. So I was then put on to every 28 days, go along and receive an injection, which took less than 5 minutes. It's a very odd injection. And in fact, I can remember the nurse the first time I got there saying, well, I have to warn you, Mr. Meredith, you won't have seen a needle like this before, because they inject about 140 milliliters of liquid into your buttock in one go, which is a huge injection. And when I looked down at this needle, it looked like a nail that you would nail into the wall rather than a hypodermic needle. Very painful, as you can imagine. But at least the one positive consolation for me is I didn't have to sit in this dreadful room. Any of you have done and had chemotherapy know exactly what I'm talking about. The room full of armchairs with people sitting with needles. My 28-day chemotherapy was literally, I was in and out within 5 minutes. And then 3 days later, the side effects kicked in. And every chemotherapy session, I guess, has its own side effects. Mine were dreadful. I had had cancer, they think, from the size of the tumor for several years. I had had no pain from it, and apart from having many digestive problems, I had had no other side effects. In fact, I have since said several times, both to doctors and in presentations, that my cancer treatment has been worse than the cancer, without a doubt. And I would repeat that over and over again. So I started on this chemotherapy. Every 28 days, I would pitch up to the chemo station, walk in, have my injection, and the nurse would say, "Have you spoken to a doctor?" And I'd say, "No, the doctor doesn't want to see me." She would look a bit dubious and I would leave. By the 5th session, even the nurses were getting quite uncomfortable with this and saying, "Well, this is not right. Every time you come for chemotherapy, you should see a doctor." And I said, "Well, perhaps it's because this is palliative. Perhaps it's because he knows that there's not much point." The last time the nurse marched off, try and find the doctor. Unfortunately, he wasn't there. So I left after the 5th session, and it was that trip home. I live out in Ribe Castile, and I was driving into Panorama, so I had a good hour's drive to think about it. And that's when I decided enough's enough. Here I am, a trained counsellor in all sorts of disciplines, and I'm not taking my own life skills and applying them to my own situation. What would I do if I were counseling somebody in this situation? And I hesitate always in talking to people with cancer, and I get quite frustrated sometimes with family members and friends that hear you have cancer and want to give you all these weird and wonderful hints and cures and magic treatments. But I want to just share the things that I decided that worked for me. I've no guarantee they'll work for you. I hope they will, but I know they work for me. And the first thing I decided was, and I made a mental decision in my mind, and I went home and I said it to my wife and I said it to my son, this cancer I have is my cancer. It belongs to me, it's mine. It's not the oncologist, it's not the thoracic surgeons, it's not the doctors, it's not anybody's, it's my cancer. And I decided from that day I would own it and that it belonged to me, and I would decide what happened to it. Nobody else. And if I didn't agree with what somebody else told me, an oncologist or any other ologist, I would refuse to do it. I checked it out with the Medicaid, and they were again very supportive. Mr. Meredith, we will support any decision you make in this process. The second thing I did, which some of you might find really odd, was I said to myself, if I'm going to deal with this, and at that stage I had been told I would have this tumor in my lung for my life, I decided I'm going to make friends with my cancer. If I'm going to have this thing that's sitting inside my lung for the next how many years, I have to make friends with it, because I have to be able to deal with it every day. That doesn't mean I have to be friendly with it every day. I can be angry with it, because one can be angry with your friends. I can coerce it, I can plead with it, I can congratulate it, but it is going to become my friend. And in that process, another thing that people find is a little strange is that I decided to give it a name. I gave the tumor in my lung a name. And I thought long and hard about this. My wife, although she's trained in allopathic medicine, then went on to do 5 years specialization in traditional Chinese medicine. So a lot of our background in my own treatment from my wife, for example, is based on TCM. So I have a leaning towards the Eastern philosophy. I gave the name of my cancer. My cancer was called Nariko. It's a Japanese word, and it means gentle child. So those were the first three things that I decided about what I would do about me and my cancer. And in counseling, if I digress a little, in counseling, we often say, and you can do it in a word, clients will say to me in a situation, let's say I'm talking about somebody, particularly in trauma counseling, where somebody is being abused physically, I can't leave my husband. And I will say, try just saying it differently. Just try and say, I won't leave my husband. Now, that may seem a strange way, but what it does is it gives you back the power. If you say won't instead of can't, you've taken the power back. You've said, I'm making this decision. And that's a powerful thing, very powerful mentally. And I'm a great believer that your mental state has a huge impact on your physical state. So that was part of my process of owning my cancer and naming my cancer. And it then enabled me move on. I decided I was going to change oncologists, and I went out and I hunted down an oncologist that I thought that I could deal with as a human being, as opposed to a doctor. I was very lucky. In fact, the partner, my wife's partner in practice, finally recommended an oncologist in Paarl, which meant it was much closer for me. She's a young woman. She's in her mid-30s, I would imagine. And the very first thing when I phoned her, it wasn't doctor this or doctor that. She said, hi, this is Benita. What can I do for you? We talked about the cancer. She was very open and upfront. She said, we're a medium-sized practice. We have about 6 oncologists in 3 centers. In the entire lifetime of our practice, we have only ever dealt with 3 neuroendocrine cancer situations, and yours will be the 3rd. The other 2 are dead, but we will do our best for you, and I'd like you to come in and see me. And this was where I saw the other difference. At the other oncologist I went to, when you walked in, it was like going into the reception of a very expensive hotel. There was a long desk with multiple reception things, and now this was COVID, so we had all these dreadful screens around everybody. I'm hard of hearing, so half the time I couldn't hear what the people were saying properly. But you got to this glass-fronted desk. They'd say, hi, you Mr. Meredith, go and sit over there and wait. Oh, and just one thing, Mr. Meredith, have you remembered your credit card? Because there will be some payments you've got to make before you go home. When I arrived at my current oncologist, it was completely different. Yes, it was smaller. They still had a reception desk with 2 people. I walked in, the woman got up from around the counter, came round, said, who are you? I said who I am. She said, that's great. I've got some forms we'll need to fill in. I'll come and sit over there with you and help you do that. And would you like a cup of tea? And that made it for me. I said, yo, I'm home. This is where I want to be. These are the people I want to deal with. And every person in that practice, whether you run in the passage to the guy sweeping the passage, whether you go for an injection, whether you see the doctor, they all treat you like a human being. Most of them know you by name already. So there's no Mr. this or Doctor that. You are treated like another human being. The other thing that's different, and this is part of the treatment philosophy they were used, is they and if you look at neuroendocrine cancer, the way it works is the cancer, the tumor, for example, in my lung was not what was causing me the damage. What neuroendocrine cancer tumors do is they release vast amounts of unhealthy hormones into your body. So the one in my adrenal gland was releasing, according to them, one hormone, and the tumor in my lung was releasing vast amounts of serotonin, but not the right sort of serotonin that's supposed to make you cheerful and happy, but a type of serotonin that in fact was damaging my heart. In fact, my heart has been damaged by the release of this hormone and was giving me the most weird and wonderful symptoms, apart from the digested ones. One of the most common ones you get with somebody who's got NETs, as we call it for short, stands for neuroendocrine tumor, is that you get flushing events. So, and that's triggered by food. So, for example, if I eat avocado pear, I start to feel like I'm getting sunburn from the inside, and I turn bright scarlet. It's extremely embarrassing, apart from anything else. But you get a whole variety of symptoms like that. The other very big downside to it is that it makes you extremely allergic to anesthetics when you have an operation, even if you go to a dentist. The moment you have an anesthetic, the tumor reacts, and you can very rapidly die, either from very, very low blood pressure or very, very high blood pressure. So when you have an operation, there's a vast amount of preparation that has to be made, even when you go to the dentist. So and that's the syndrome that is caused by the cancer. And you can imagine having that on top of now saying, well, we were going back to the new oncologist approach. What they said was, we meet every 2 weeks at N1 City with a team of all sorts of people from all sorts of disciplines. Anybody can come. And we get a chance to present a case that's of interest to us. And I've decided I'm going to present your case because it's very unusual. I think there are only about 23 people, as I know, in South Africa with NETs. So this is interesting to us and we want to present it. Do you mind? I said, no, go ahead. I think it's a great idea. And I was lucky. And again, as my wife says, the universe stepped in. A bunch of the right people happened to be at that presentation. One of them was a specialist who knew nothing at all about cancer, but had asked a question which, in fact, I had asked to the very first oncologist. I said to him, how do you know that the tumor in my lung is the same cancer as the tumor on my adrenal gland? Oh, he says the PET scan says that. I said, but how do you know? You've done a biopsy on the lung, so you know what that is, but you can't do a biopsy on the one on the adrenal gland, because one of the other downsides of neuroendocrine cancer, the moment you physically touch in surgery the tumor, it goes into panic mode and releases vast amounts of this hormone that's doing you the damage. So they can't do a biopsy. And he said, well, we just know. This team that met said, well, we don't know. Yes, it's an educated guess, but we would like to talk to Mr. Meredith about taking the risk to take that tumor out. For a variety of reasons. One, we could then do a biopsy on it and know if it is actually neuroendocrine cancer. But two, it would relieve the cancer burden on the body. And what we will do, and again, here my medical aid were incredibly cooperative. I was admitted into hospital twice in advance, 4 days the first time and 3 days the second time, to just prepare with a whole variety of tests for the operation. The second time I was introduced, I was put into intensive care for 3 days prior to the operation. I had the op at N1 City by a surgeon who had fortunately done this twice before. The adrenal gland was removed successfully. The operation went very well. They managed the blood pressure crisis, obviously, otherwise I wouldn't be here. And I'd been home about 3 days, and Benita, my oncologist, phoned in the evening in tears. And she said, I have such good news. She said, that tumor in your adrenal gland was cancer, but it is not the same cancer. Now, what that meant was I went from being a stage 4 cancer to a stage 1 cancer, which then meant they could now operate and remove the tumor from my lung. There's a story involved with that, but I see I'm running out of time. But I effectively had that tumor removed about 12 days ago. They removed not just the tumor, they removed the entire left top lobe of my lung, about 45% of my lung capacity. And again, I say here, that treatment's been far worse than cancer. The recovery, and I'm still going through recovery, has been really horrendous. But I had that. I came out of hospital, and about 5 or 6 days ago, Benita phoned me yet again in tears to say, it's fantastic. Your lung, not called a biopsy, but let's call it biopsy. Your lung biopsy has come back from the hospital. They analyzed all the lymph nodes they took out. They analyzed the entire rest of the lung. This cancer from your tumor has not spread to anywhere else. So right now, we can class you as being cancer-free. There's a little slight downside to that, is that unfortunately neuroendocrine cancer never actually goes away because it's circulating in your body all the time. But the likelihood is that, and it's typically if you have lung cancer, it will grow again in the lung, but that could take 5 years, it could take 10 years. But as it stands today, I am cancer-free. And that is my story in 20 minutes. Thank you for listening.
Michael, thank you so much for sharing your story, and I want to call it inspirational, but I also want to call it so real. We've had speakers in the past, and they're incredible speakers, but they also motivational speakers, and they keep it light and fluffy. And what I liked today was the fact that you mentioned the good stuff, but also the bad stuff. So one of the questions that got posted on the chat group at the moment is, Michael, as a counselor, were there expectations internally and externally for you to cope better than other cancer patients with your cancer diagnosis?
Externally, I felt no pressure, I must be honest. In fact, and in a sense, I was very disappointed, again, with the initial oncology company that I went to, is that they didn't offer to provide any of that. In all their brochures, they talk glibly about providing counseling care, but the one time I did try to take advantage of it, it wasn't there. Were there any internal pressures? Yes, I guess they were. And I think that was what happened to me on that drive home that day. I said, come on now, let's start using some of your life skills here that you know a great deal about, and not take yourself in hand and take control of yourself, because I think in that sense, being a counselor helped me a great deal, because I would say, I feel really shit and depressed today. And that's really appropriate. So, yeah, I hope that answers the question.
I think so. I'm going to open the floor to everyone to ask you questions and to share their journeys shortly. But I've just got one or two questions from my side. As a person that got quite a severe diagnosis, you mentioned how rare the cancer is, and then also all the things that it causes. the question I want to ask is your family and your friends. Once you've now told everyone, um, you obviously got various reactions. How do you cope with the various reactions from your own experience, and then also as a trained counselor? What advice would you give to people out there, whether it's a rare cancer or whether it's a more common cancer, or even, it doesn't have to be cancer, it could be anything else. What advice would you give?
Okay, yeah. Firstly, let me talk about my reaction. And in a sense, I have to be very careful in my reaction because I am talking as a trained counselor, and to be facetious, that's read all the textbooks on what you should say. But I did find a lot of the reaction frustrating and annoying. To be told, well, just be positive. You don't have to give up. When 2 days ago somebody just sat there behind a desk and said, no, we're not ever going to be able to cure this, and it's going to kill you some stage or other. That just felt for me, and I sometimes did get a bit ratty about it. In terms of how I try to respond in my own situation, I think we have a very simple thing we use, particularly when you're dealing with people who want to learn to counsel the first time, is to say, try and reflect the content of what the person has said to you and what emotion you think they must feel. It's an approach that was developed by a famous psychotherapist called Carl Rogers. But he said, if you reflect content and emotion, you can do very little damage to the person, because if you get it wrong, you give them. So if you come back to somebody and say, "Well, you must feel really angry about the fact that you've now got lung cancer," and that isn't how the person's feeling, the person can come back to you and say, "No, I'm not angry. I'm scared." And so we talk about it in terms of letting the person paint the picture with their own palette. Don't use your colors, and let them paint their own picture for you. And your role as somebody trying to help somebody in a cancer situation is to purely give them the opportunity to share what they really feel, and not load your feelings and your cures or non-cures on top of them, because they may not work.
Thank you for that. I wanted to ask a question about end of life midwife and what that entails, but I think that's a conversation for a completely different day, because we've got about 20 minutes left, and um, I want to give everyone the opportunity to ask you a question if they wanted to. I want to do it in a controlled manner though, so that we don't have too much, but we don't have a lot of people on the support group today. But before I open it up to the floor, I just want to mention, if you are a new person on the support group today, I know Ruan is brand new today. Please remember that we do have a WhatsApp support group as well. That everyone, well, pretty much everyone that's on here today is on that group, and they give daily support and just try and support each other from a human being perspective. So if you want to be on that WhatsApp group, please just put on your details on the group, or you can send a direct message to CANSA support on our chat box, and they will add you to that WhatsApp group. And that's why this is here. We are here to support you and to support each other through our journeys, and we need to acknowledge that every single person's journey is completely different. So Michael, I'm not going to ask you about the end of life midwife now. I would like to have that conversation with you at some point, though. So I think we'll have that discussion at some other point. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to quickly allow people to unmute themselves. And then if you've got a question, please keep it brief so that we give opportunity to everyone. But the floor is open. Andreas, I saw you unmuted yourself, so you are first.
Okay. Yeah, good morning to everybody. It's nice to be back. Yeah, sorry, I was the last time I had a few things to do that day, so I couldn't make it. Yeah, first of all, I just want to say thank you to Michael for his story. Yeah, every journey is a journey of the person himself. And what I liked a lot is that he said he made friends with his cancer. So I did it as well. The first time I was diagnosed, I decided not to resist it. So there is but to go with it, to accept it, not saying that I will not fight it, that I will not do what I can do to cure it. But yeah, just to be in flow with it, because I feel if you resist something, you make it worse, because it gets a thing in your head in the end, and you have this internal battle by resisting it. And that has a negative effect on your body also, I believe. So I also, I didn't name it, but yeah, I also called it my, my traveler that's in my body and going with me. The other thing I like is where he said he decided to look differently at the cancer. And I did the same thing, not to be the victim to the cancer, that the cancer, I just felt I didn't want the cancer to overpower me totally, but that I'm still in control in a sort of a way of how I react to it. I can't stop it, but I have a choice of how I will view it and how I will react to it. So I also choose not to be the victim, but to be more in charge of, of the cancer and my path that I'm walking on. Yeah. So yeah, thank you, Michael. It's good to hear it from another side as well. Yeah, for myself, I don't know. The last time I spoke to you, I think I just finished my esophagus radiation, which meant, I could start to eat again, because for 2 months I couldn't eat any solid foods because the tumor was blocking my esophagus. So luckily that is gone away. Well, the tumor is still there, it's just small, so I can eat again. So the next step was then to tackle the metastasis that to my liver that came from the esophagus. So, but I must give you some good news. So in June, I should have started with chemo, because we couldn't radiate. You can't radiate the liver because that will damage your liver. So I had to do chemo, which I didn't actually want to do. So, but the oncologist said we have to measure the tumor before we start with the chemo. And he said, because while we are busy with the chemo, you want to monitor it and measure it again just to see that there's an effect, because he says the chemo is going to be bad for me. And if it's not shrinking the tumor, he said, then we must change the therapy, or we must find something else. So we measured it mid-June, and then the results came back, and the tumor was smaller than when we measured it in April. So that's some good news, and he couldn't explain it. He said never seen it in his life, that a cancer tumor in the liver got smaller on its own without any medical interference. So yeah, we put the chemo on hold because it's not necessary now to do it. We are tackling now the other metastasis to my lymph node. So I'm receiving at the moment radiation on that, and I will be finished next Friday. Yeah, then I will have done my 20 sessions, and then we will measure the tumor in the liver again, because then we have to decide what to do. But I'm very confident that if it shrunk by itself, it would have shrunk some more. Yeah, I just want to mention, and my doctor was also shocked, when I will finish this radiation next Friday, I would have received 100 radiation sessions since mid-April on my top body. So it's quite a lot at the moment. It's just the fatigue that gets me in the afternoons and the evenings. Yeah, but that is where I am at the moment. But I'm very positive, because I decide I live day by day. So it doesn't matter what happens tomorrow and if I get sicker or anything, because I don't have the power over that in any case. The only power I have is to be here and now and to make the most of each day. And that's how I live.
That's incredible, Andreas. Thank you for the feedback, and it feels good to actually hear that. Michael, I want to ask you, and it's going to add on to what you've said and what Andreas have said about where you made friends with your cancer. You named it, and I've heard that before. And so far, everyone I've heard it from, it's made their journey a little bit easier. What steps do you take? How do you come up with how do you wake up one morning and decide, listen, I'm not necessarily going to fight back, but I'm gonna make friends with my cancer. I'm gonna name it. I'm gonna it's part of me. I'm not gonna fight it. I'm gonna give it to Michael first, and then Andreas, if you want to add onto that as well.
Okay, in my sense, it fitted in a lot to some of the other things that I was doing along the way to treat my cancer. Not treat the cancer because the cancer wasn't treatable, but to treat the symptoms and to treat the side effects of the chemo, which were the real problem. Is that one thing was my wife was assisting a great deal with TCM techniques because in TCM they have a very different view on cancer, but they have very good means of helping with symptoms. But one of the other things that I do and still do is I do a lot of guided visualization or guided meditation. And it was the visualization that enabled me to just in visualizing to say, okay, now let's look at this thing. And I'm by trade, I'm in the computer business. I still write software. And what I had done, I had taken a scan, the CT scan. I got it downloaded onto my computer, and I rendered a 3D image of it in color. So I was able to actually have a physical look at what it looked like. I know that sounds a bit macabre, but in the sense of the visualization, it was really just the visualization. I said, what do I need here? I need somebody that's going to be gentle. I don't want a grown-up cancer, if you will. I prefer in a healing environment, working with women doctors. Obviously, my wife is a woman, my oncologist a woman, my physio that's working with my lung recovery is a woman. I think women make better doctors because I think they nurture better. And that was part of the rationale behind wanting a female name. And I just looked around for something I wanted to use Japanese. I did a course on using calligraphy, Japanese calligraphy as a means of meditation. So I wanted a Japanese word. Somebody asked me the other day, well, now Noriko has been hacked out. What do you feel about that? The reality is Noriko is still here in spirit because as I said to you earlier, this is going to come back, and she's there. I talk to her every day, ask her to keep calm and try and be comfortable with how life is and how things are going.
Wow, that's impressive, Andreas. Before you answer, I have a question here. Michael, if you know your story has a bit of a happy ending for now, and I mean the chapters are still being written. Andreas is happy ending to this chapter, and I mean the next chapter could very well be completely different, and we've got to acknowledge that. As a trained counselor, Michael, if someone gets a diagnosis and there's literally nothing they can do, what would you as a trained counselor say to those people? And especially, I mean, we are recording, so we are going to be posting this for more people to see. What would you say to untrained people, how they must deal with people that got that diagnosis, that aren't as positive, How do you approach that? Because I have felt sometimes that being too positive about it is not what that person needs. What advice would you give as a trained counselor?
Okay, let me first say, even as a trained counselor, there were many times that I was not positive at all. But my advice, and I don't like the word advice, but what I would say to people in that situation, and it varies from day to day, is you have to build a support group around you of some form or other. And it has to be a support group, and you learn as you go along which people fit in and which don't. But the one is to join groups like this, for example, because it can be very lonely in the middle of the night and you've got nobody to talk to. But if you look, you open up the group and you can see somebody's online, chat to them. Reach out to friends, but you need to reach out. You in a sense, you've got to be quite selective in a positive way to say, I need to reach out to friends who are going to be able to deal with this. I think the reality is, and even in your own family, you will find people that can't deal with your cancer. I honestly had somebody, very well educated somebody, ask me if cancer was contagious. And at first I thought they were joking. But at the end of the day, the answer is reach out, find out as much as you can about it. But you need to be discerning in that, because there's a lot of rubbish about it on the internet. And I think that critical thing I said right at the beginning, and I think Andreas said the same, is own it. Because once you own it, it's you have the power. And once you have the power, in anything, doesn't matter whether you're sickness or whatever it is you're trying to deal with, if you're in charge of it, it gives you much more strength to try and deal with it.
I love what you said earlier about changing the narrative slightly. Just by changing one word, you start owning it, and then you're not the victim, you actually own it. And that's just by changing one word. And that is something I'm definitely going to take away from today, is whether you're a cancer survivor or whether you're going through cancer, whether you've got whatever going on in your life. I suppose there's a lot of talk about gender-based violence, for instance, and what you mentioned earlier about a woman saying that I can't leave my husband, compared to I won't leave my husband, and just changing that narrative. Andreas, you sorry, I cut you off before you even spoke earlier, about that question that I asked about naming and owning, and just to add on to what Michael was saying.
Yeah. So for me, like I said, I decided not to resist it, because that is a whole thing on its own, and just to also take the power back to myself. And I said, I don't want it to define me. So up to this day, I live my life normally as far as I can. I know the fatigue is sometimes hindering me, but just to be, then I feel more in control. So I'm not the victim, I'm more the victorer. And like Michael said, I also meditate. So for me, the meditation played a very big role in just imagining that I am better and that I'm healthy, because I feel that there is a positive from that side if my mind and my heart is in coherence. And I meditate and I can imagine, or I can feel I'm healed, or I'm healing. That will have an effect on my body. That's the one thing I do as well. I do the meditation every morning of my life. I will do that meditation, and that is in conjunction with my gratitude that I do in the morning as well, which is sort of, I make a list of things that I'm grateful for, and then I say thank you for it. And one of the things I do every morning is to say thank you that I'm healing, and thank you that I'm healed. And all of this, I believe, is making my journey so much different than what it could have been. Because having 2 grade 4 cancers, aggressive cancers that they can't actually heal, that's moved to 5 different places in my body, but still life is beautiful. Still I can go on. Yeah, life is, it's not always the same. Some days you're on top of the mountain and some days you're there at the bottom. But it makes the journey much easier for me. Like I said to somebody the other day, the last year has been, I think, the worst year in my life. The worst challenges I had to go through. But at the same time, it was the best year I've had so far. Because the things I've experienced and the strength I found inside myself to cope with these things and to be inspiration and a hope to other people, because that's what I'm doing currently. I'm involved with hospice and different things, and I'm doing inspirational talks just to tell my story and to say, I don't let it define me. And these are the things that worked for me. Maybe in your situation, you can also use this. So that was just, yeah, that's just my view.
Okay, I want to ask other people if they want to share. Shahid said, "Thanks, Michael. I remember that the first note to me was to take back my power. It was so fundamental. Thank you for sharing your experience. It will help a lot of us." And I agree with Shahid completely. One thing I want to just say is that, am I correct in saying that in your opinion, Michael and Andreas, if you have a bad day, because we always talk about, and you guys have mentioned that yes, take back your power and be say thank you for healing and stuff, but it's not always as easy for everyone to say that. You've got people that are prone to various types of depression. Now you're already a depression sufferer, and then you get a diagnosis of stage 4 cancer, and a doctor saying to you, "Oh, you're not going to make it." So for them to go and say, "Oh, yeah, no, but it'll be okay. I accept it," and is a little bit too wide, because people are different. So if you're going through something, acknowledging the fact that you are going through something tough and that you're having a very tough day is also vitally important, isn't it? Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah, I think that's extremely important. So, to put it very bluntly, is when you feel shit, acknowledge that you feel shit. Don't try and pretend, and, Andreas said something, and I'm not sure what he meant, but for me, for example, if I meet people or if people phone me who know I have cancer and they say, "How are you feeling?" I'm quite open. If I'm feeling really awful today, I let them know. I'm not into pretending to be okay and everything's fine. If they're my friend and they've asked, then I will tell them. So yeah, for me, it's say it like it is, if you will.
Sometimes it doesn't help to pussyfoot around the subject, and I think look, I've never had cancer, but I've had both my sisters are cancer survivors. My mom's a cancer survivor, so as a support, a caregiver, as such, sometimes we also don't know what the right thing is to do. And your first reaction would be to try and be positive and tell people, "No, you know what? The fight starts up here. Get your head right, and then you will, half the battle is won." And I've said that before as well, and I've realized in recent months that sometimes that's the wrong thing to say, because sometimes that's not what the person needs to hear. So from a person that's not a cancer survivor or someone that's going through cancer, I just want to mention the fact that I've learned that sometimes you must just listen, and not enforce your advice onto people, especially if you've never been in their shoes. Sometimes people just want to learn, listen, and or want you to listen, and it's important to not just hear but actually listen and take in. So if you ask someone like Michael, "How are you doing?" and they answer you, actually hear what they're saying. If they're saying they're having a tough day, acknowledge the fact that they are having a tough day. So I just wanted to mention that um, that little point. Ben said, yeah, people struggle with honest answers to how are you, and that's also, I think, a very valid question, or very valid point to make, is that sometimes the person going through that journey also don't quite know how to answer, because they might think that the people don't want to hear, or they might think that they want to protect their family and their friends from this journey. So they rather say, "Oh no, I'm doing fine." Meantime, they're in agony, and they're really worried and they're stressful. Michael, what would you say about that?
Well, I'd like to comment to that. Is that, you might not want to tell people how you feel, because you think they won't cope, or they won't know what to say, or they won't know what to do. My belief is that you are, in a sense, you're putting that person down. And to use, it's like the analogy, I guess, of, the husband sitting there and the wife walks in with a new dress, and she says, well, what do you think of the dress? And he's not going to say, oh God, I think it's bloody awful, because he thinks it will offend her. And this falls, but in a more serious sense, into that. I believe that if you hide your feelings, you don't share with this friend who has inquired that your true feelings, that you're in fact, what you're saying is, I'm not going to tell you because I don't think you could cope. And in that, you're putting them down.
And yet, Michael, I want to add to that. I think you would agree with me. People won't ask you if they don't care. You get some platonic friendships where people, kind of ask you how you are, and they like feel, okay, please just don't answer. I don't want to hear. But in my experience, people that really take the effort to pick up the phone or send you a message and ask you, um, how are you? If they take the time to do that, they genuinely care and they genuinely want to know. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I would. And I see Ben posted a thing just there, came up, that said, but they don't always cope with what you have to say. But that, and I know it sounds callous, Ben, but that's not your responsibility. They asked, you've been honest and open and frank, and between the two of you, you can work it out. But it really isn't your issue if they can't cope. It's their responsibility. You may be able to help them by saying, perhaps going back to them and saying, okay, well, what is it about what I said that made you feel uncomfortable? What is it about what I've said that you can't cope with? And then explore the relationship further. Maybe in a husband and his wife, and the wife's not coping, is, well, I'm frightened I'm going to lose you. And then you can explore that. It gives you an opening. But yeah, Ben, I don't think you should keep things back because you don't think people you talk to are going to cope with what you have to say.
Michael, I want to add to that. A very good friend of mine, Liesl Tom, she's a journalist for ABC News, and she's also one of the top 50 transformational and life coaches in the world. And the first thing she taught me a while back, because I kind of had that problem where there's three sides to every story. It's your side, the other person's side, and then the middle side. And I want to almost take that analogy with what you were saying now, where if someone asks you something and you tell them and they can't cope with it, you told them what they asked. So don't put more strain on yourself and worry about, okay, but they can't cope, because that is their journey, that is their part. I hope that makes sense, because
Yeah.
I want to agree with you, and I don't think it sounds callous at all, because we all need to learn that we are on our own journey, and if people show an interest and you tell them and they can't cope with it, then maybe they shouldn't be in your life, or maybe they shouldn't have asked. I think that sounds more callous than what you said, but it's the absolute truth. And for anybody that's going to be watching this afterwards, that's maybe just a supporter or a family member, be careful what you ask. If you're too afraid to hear the truth, then rather don't ask. Be there in a supportive manner, but don't ask a question that you don't want the answer to. And I'm not saying that to the people on the group, because obviously the people on the group are here for the support. But once we publish this, you will have family members, and you've got people that want to support, and they don't always know how to support. So I'm just mentioning that to them. All right.
If I could just come back on one thing on that.
Of course.
Another way to deal with it is to say, if you want to ask a question, but you're worried, is rather make it. I often say to people, make a statement and don't ask a question. So in other words, you can say to somebody, well, you're really looking bad today. Are you feeling okay? Or, wow, you look fantastic today. How are things going?
I agree with you. I like that. Right. Okay. So it's 10 past. So we're a little bit over our time, but I want to take another 5 minutes or so for final thoughts from anyone, or if anyone wants to share. I know there are new members here today. So if you feel up to sharing, you obviously don't have to. This is a journey that you're going through, and we don't expect you to share. Obviously, we want you to share so we can support you. But if you don't want to, so 5 minutes of final thoughts. Andreas, I see you.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. Let me. Yeah. I also just want to say what I learned in the past year is that not one day is the same. You can't be positive all the time. Although I'm a very positive person, there are many days that I can't cope with what's happening. I mean, just a day or two back, I have so many things to do in the afternoon, and I keep on pushing, and at one stage, I just realized I can't keep my body up. I have to go and lie down because my body doesn't want to work with me anymore because it's tired. It doesn't. I must lay down. I can't stand up anymore. So I went to my room, and then I just started crying because I was frustrated because I wanted to do a lot of things more, but I can't. So I had to rest. And I think it's very important that if people ask you how you are, that you will be honest. Because maybe they can support you if you're honest. And I also learned it's okay to be not okay sometimes. Because after all, I am sick, although I don't appear sick, but I am. So it's okay not to be okay. And it's just then to know that is just for the moment, or for today I'm not okay, but tomorrow might look different. So that's what I've learned over the past year.
Awesome. Thank you for those thoughts. Michael, final thoughts?
No, just thank you very much for the opportunity. It's really good to share the story and to hear other people's. You did mention this will be on YouTube. Where would we be able to get that link?
I'm gonna probably post it in the next day or two. I just want to make sure that if there are anybody that wants to be blurred out or whatever, that we do that edit before we post it. So it's probably going to be out on Tuesday, and I will share it on the WhatsApp group. Also, just keep an eye on CANSA's Facebook page, and also on LinkedIn. And then, of course, Emmanuel Peterson on Facebook, LinkedIn. I normally share it on there as well. So just keep your eye on social media, and we'll post it there. And then, of course, it goes onto the CANSA YouTube channel. So if you miss it anywhere else, you'll just go like the channel and follow the channel on YouTube, and you'll get a notification once it goes up.
No, that's all. But thank you very much for the opportunity. I've appreciated it.
Thank you for being here. If there's anybody else that wants to share, just quickly unmute yourself. Otherwise, I just want to say thank you to every single person that
Anil?
Yes, someone speaking. Oh, Gavin.
Gavin.
Yes. Hi, Gavin. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks. No, I just want to say thank you to Michael and Andreas. I mean, listening to them, it is so inspirational, and you are really giving us hope. That's the word I want to mention, hope, going forward. So thank you so much.
I want to reiterate that Gavin Kester, thank you for saying that, because I agree 100%, and I think that is what the session is all about, and what the support group is all about. And we'll have our next one next month, so please keep an eye on social media. What I am going to do, the registration page on EP Digital, I am going to keep open. So even though the artwork might change throughout the days, it might have the old artwork for now. Please, if you want to register already for the link for next month, please go register there, because I know that everyone is busy and sometimes we miss that. So I'm not going to close the registration page on EP Digital. Go register as soon as you want to, and we'll let you know as soon as we've got a date, and we'll share the link with you, as well as reminders going forward, because we obviously want the support group to grow. We want more people to know about it. We want more people to get involved. And I think if we put a limit on when you can start registering for the next session, then it puts a bit of a limit on the amount of people we get on here. So please feel free to also share that link with other people, so that they can register for this, if you are part of another support group, or if you know of someone that really needs it. And then with that, just once again, thank you to Michael, thank you, Andreas, for sharing, and thank you for every single person that's here, whether you're sharing or whether you're not. Whatever reason you are here for, we want you here, and we want to support you in whatever way possible. So please remember the WhatsApp group. Please send a message with your number to CANSA support on the chat box, so that we can share it with them, and they will add you to the WhatsApp group, where we also support each other. And people like Michael is on there, people like Andreas are on there, and a whole bunch of other people. And just as a final thought from my side, please be wary on how you approach people going through their journeys, because like I said earlier, I always thought you've got to be positive for them, and you've got to tell them, you know what, fight the fight up here and whatever. And it's not always the right advice. So I'm the first one to admit that that's not always the case. So I've even learned from the support group how to just change the narrative slightly. So thank you. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday, and keep an eye on social media. And we'll see you again next week on this on the same platform.